Okay, well, good evening, vinyl community. It hasn't been too long since I've done one of these videos. I'm trying to get a little bit better at doing these. There's been a lot of things I've kind of been wanting to make a video about. If anyone follows my channel, last video I mentioned that I want to do a video on Depeche Mode. I'm working on that one. I kind of want to have a few like graphics to kind of illustrate some points. It's going to be kind of a history of like how my Depeche Mode vinyl collection has grown over time, my history of the band, and we'll get to that. First thing I want to talk about is this weekend. I live in the suburbs of Washington D.C. and apparently there's this annual event I'd never been to called the Capitol Audio Fest, and it's an event where they show off vendors show off like some super high end audio gear, and also there's like a lot of record and CD dealers there. Most of the stuff that the vendors, the CD and the record sellers are selling is definitely like audiophile stuff. A lot of MoFis and Speaker's Corner. There's one vendor had a lot of stuff from Japan, almost entirely jazz. Mostly geared towards audiophile collectors, although there are some um, regular vinyl dealers there. Real quick, there are about 8 floors worth of vendors showing off high end audio gear. I went to one floor and then decided there was no point in me torturing myself looking at all this gear that maybe I could afford, but I wouldn't want to spend what they're asking for. And I'll give you an example. This is a flyer I got. Um, there was a turntable that sold for $59,500. Loudspeakers retail $294,000. And there were some pretty serious dudes looking at this equipment, and a phono stage 73,500. I don't even know what a phono stage is. But anyway, I got the gear I've got. I like it. I think it sounds pretty good. Not in that price. You can see my ELAC speakers I have here, so that's the kind of high end audio gear I'm dealing with. But damn, I like those speakers. I think they sound pretty good. So I did pick up some records there, of course. Um, I don't think any of what I picked up would qualify as audiophile, with possibly one exception. I got a compact disc of Steps to Heaven, an SACD, Miles Davis. I This is a Miles album I'm not that familiar with. I've listened to it once on streaming. I really liked it. It's got Herbie Hancock on it. Enough said. So when I saw that I could snag an SACD pressing of it at the show, I was like, yeah, hell yeah. I did buy. Here's an album that I want to talk about and then transition into a different topic. One of the albums I did pick up is um, this guy. We all know Cheap Thrills, Janis Joplin, Big Brother and the Holding Company. An album that I also have on SACD. Um, and I'd always, for a couple of years now, I've been wanting to get just a good old OG vinyl copy of it. Preferably the earlier the better. I think this album came out in, what was it, 67, 68. This album came out. And I snagged one. I paid $2.50 for it. He was one of those guys who said, like, you buy four and I'll give them to you for $10. So I picked that one up and three other albums. And it is definitely like an older copy. You can tell by looking at the label. Um, I looked at it and it definitely had, when you collect vinyl long enough, you kind of develop an eye for telling, what are what are scratches that are like really shallow and they'll play fine. What's a scratch? Well, yeah, this album's fucked. You don't want to buy this one. And I could tell by looking at it that this album just needed a good cleaning and then it would play fine. And sure enough, that was the case. It does have some scratches on it, but they were very shallow. The longer you listen to records, the better you get at spotting this stuff. And my experience with cleaning records, I'm going to move into the topic of cleaning records and taking care of your records. Kind of what I tend to do is I have a cleaning solution. Hold on a second. This is sold at Mobius Records in Fairfax. I use that and there are these cloths you can order on Amazon. And I tend to like clean the surface if an album even needs cleaning. And usually I let it kind of dry for a while before I play it if possible. And then what I find helps more than anything else is just play the record a couple times. Often the more the needle kind of gets in the groove, it kind of cleans out some of that stuff that's in there. You play an album a couple times, I find that they get better with each playing. This album being a great example, and it's just like a desert on a disc for me. But I'm going to include a link below this. I saw a really interesting video this morning where a guy had some pretty low cost things you could do to improve your sound system. Some cheap tools for cleaning records and things like that. So yeah, I'm going to check out, there's a couple of his suggestions I'm going to try. The one thing that's kind of bedeviled me taking care of my records is that sometimes my stylus seems to collect an awful lot of dirt and dust, and the stylus can kind of get clogged up, and I've had styluses that just got to the point where I just could not get them to play decently again, and I was just cheaper just buy a new stylus. One of the things I've done over the years is I used one of these devices as like a kind of a it's like a soft gel that you place the needle into, and it cleans your needle. And this came up in that video that I'm going to reference it. He recommended these, but he claimed that some people say that these will actually adhere to your needle, and the needle can get sticky and it can get screwed when that happens. And I think there may be something to that. So I'm possibly going to stop using this. He recommended a brush that I'm going to try. The current stylus I've had it for about 2 months now. I haven't had any issues. But yeah, there's a few things I'm going to try to get some better performance out of my turntable. It shouldn't break the bank. Hopefully I won't have to pay $53,000 for a turntable like I saw over the weekend. But anyway, so a lot of cool vendors there, a lot of stuff. I'm not going to show the records I bought there because I haven't had a chance to listen to them yet. But I've been listening to a lot of jazz lately. And I'm going to just mention a couple here. Oh, darn it. I don't have that Wes Montgomery album. Man, love me some Wes Montgomery. I picked up a Wes Montgomery album a couple weeks ago. Absolutely just blew me away. And I paid a visit to Dylan's store, Noble Records in Charlotte, North Carolina. Use it as an excuse to go down there, check out Dylan's store, and visit a friend that lives in Charlotte. But this record I picked up at Noble Records. This is one of the ones I picked up. It is a kind of obscure 1971, just call it Doug Carn, Infant Eyes. This was kind of described as spiritual jazz. So that is that uh, kind of trippy, um, that kind of trippy stuff from the early '70s. Sort of like maybe some Sun Ra, but that's what I was expecting, and you got a little of that, but it was more. I'd say this sounded more like kind of modal jazz from the mid '60s, like the kind of in a silent way period. Um, yeah, I love this album. This is really good. Kind of obscure. It's nice when obscure stuff like this gets reissued. I love this, man. I thought this was really good. Um, and Doug Carnes' wife, I believe her name was Jean Carnes, sings on a number of the tracks. One of those great jazz vocalists. Kind of reminded me of like those early, um, you know, Return to Forever albums with Chick Corea, where they had a female vocalist on those early albums. Kind of reminded me of that. So this was really cool. Another one that I revisited recently, flute player Bobby Humphrey. Man, this album smokes. And as I was listening to it, I was thinking, my God, this kind of sounds like some of those Donald Byrd albums from the '70s. Like Blackbird and Stepping in Tomorrow, and it just really sounded like a hell of a lot like those albums. And sure enough, man, turns out it's produced by the same guy that produced those Donald Byrd albums. She was kind of a protege of Donald Byrd. He kind of helped her get started. So, like, yeah, his influence in, probably the same musicians on all those albums. But, like, if you really like those '70s Donald Byrd albums, um, this is a dynamite album. I like flute. Love me some flute. Love me some flute ever since I got turned on to Jethro Tull, man. So this is a killer. Check that one out. Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about another one I picked up at Dylan's record store. I think this is the best record I've heard probably in about 2 months. Duke Pearson Big Band. So Duke Pearson, keyboard player, staple Blue Note. He has really become one of my favorite jazz musicians in the last year or so. Already talked about the big band album. I think I got really turned on to Duke with this record. This is a Christmas album, but man, this is just so tasteful. And it's getting near that time of year, so I'm sure I'll be playing this album again really soon. I was just really struck by how good this record was. And that got me listening to Duke Pearson. And I'll mention one other album before we move on, and that is this one is also just stupendous. This is a tone poet called The Phantom. As you can tell, Bobby Hutcherson also appears on this album. So, yeah, I've really become a big fan of Duke Pearson. So I've also been listening to. I went through a period where I was listening to a lot of prog in the last couple weeks, and I'll just draw your attention to two albums. This is one that is definitely like pretty highly regarded amongst prog heads. The band is called Hatfield in the North, so this is true early '70s British prog weirdness. I don't know if this would be considered part of the Canterbury scene or not. Now, I hadn't listened to this one in a while, and my recollection was this was like prog, and like really weird and really trippy. And I listened to it again, and my memory had failed me. It was like a lot jazzier than what I was expecting, and man, there were just some really cool Fender Rhodes just all over this album, and I am just a sucker for Fender Rhodes keyboard, man. And it is just all over this album. So, yeah, this was not as proggy as I was expecting it to be. I hadn't listened to it in a while. It's a lot jazzier than what I remembered it being, but I remember enjoying it when I first listened to it a few years ago, and it's just as great as I remember it. So if you're up for some kind of jazz influenced prog, check out Hatfield in the North. Um, yeah, this album's not too hard to find. I see it around. Yeah, it's not too difficult to find. Going to talk about one other prog album. I am a huge Steve Hillage fan. He was a member, not a founding member of Gong, but he joined Gong during their what's generally considered their best period from the mid 70s. And there's like a lot of albums from that period that basically the musicians that were in Gong also played on Steve Hillage's albums, so they just kind of interchanged. And some of the albums are under the title Gong, and some of them come out as Steve Hillage albums. For those of you who aren't familiar with Steve Hillage, um, just a great guitarist. Very kind of, I would compare him to Dave Gilmour because, they're both just, you know, they're just gods on the Stratocaster, and he's just soaring, just trippy guitar leads, and just so tasteful. Just an amazing guitarist. He gets such beautiful tone on that guitar. I bought this album when I was in high school just because I just thought the cover in the back was just really interesting, and it was just all these. I think I've talked about this album before on my channel. Just this band of hippies on the back, and it just looked really psychedelic. And I've this album has not left my turntable since I was in high school, and I was at a record show recently, and this is a UK copy, and it was obviously in really good shape. So I just couldn't help it, man. I was like, yeah, let me just hear what an original UK sounds like, and it did sound quite different. All I can say was like the bass and the bottom end was just a lot heavier on the UK pressing. I probably at some point should do a whole video on Steve Hillage, because I got a lot of Hillage in my collection, and I definitely have a few albums that I think may be somewhat unique. Not sure how many Hillage fans are out there, but I got a lot of Hillage on vinyl, and some kind of unique pressings I think people might find interesting. So anyway, that's the prog section. So those of you who watch my videos, you know that you know I tend to talk about classical some, and I usually save it to the end because I know just not everyone's into classical. So now we're heading into the classical section, guys. So I want to quickly touch on something quite interesting, and that is there are these albums. This was a series called Super Analog Disc. These came out in the 80s. It was there's a guy in Woodbridge that has a store. He's got like a whole bunch of Japanese stuff. And this is a series of records that came out in the 80s. They were able to license titles from Decca, all the big guys, and they put out these audiophile pressings. And so this guy had a pretty nice stash of these. They are not cheap. But so I looked through it, and I went with this one, Pierre Boulez, conducting Debussy and Ravel. Hard to go wrong with that stuff. So, and I have to say, these do sound really, really good. Really, really nice. All analog. And so, all you audiophiles out there, you might keep your eyes open for these. Now, there was one thing that kind of sucked about this album. It's like, okay, we got Afternoon of a Faun, we got the Nocturnes. For all of you people who like Debussy, there are 3 Nocturnes. This disc contains 2 Nocturnes. So I suspect what was going on was Mr. Pierre wanted to conduct some Debussy, wanted to do the Nocturnes, and they were like, yeah, you need a choir for that third one. We don't have a choir. You get to record 2 of them. So this disc only contains 2 of the Nocturnes, not the third one, which came as a big surprise to me. So I listened to that, and I was just like, okay, I can't go to bed without listening to the third Nocturne. I gotta hear it. So I went over to my shelf where I had some CDs, and I looked, and I was like, let me find a good recording of the Nocturnes and listen to that third one. And I ended up going with this one, Pierre Boulez, conducting Cleveland Orchestra, Deutsche Grammophon, stupendous disc. And I want to talk just really quick. Yeah, Pierre Boulez, maybe a controversial conductor. He's not, you know, if you know Pierre, you know that he has kind of his own style, and he recorded this repertoire twice, and it's really interesting. Usually with conductors, you want their earlier recordings when they're younger. They almost never get better as they age, man. Usually the recordings they do when they're younger are they're almost always better. And I'm not sure in this case which is better. Sonically, the Deutsche Grammophon is definitely, I'd say, better. Performance wise, I think maybe he was just a little bit more to the point, and maybe a little more, just a little more energetic in the earlier recordings. But for those of you, but he's fantastic in this repertoire, and Boulez is obviously a very important conductor. So if you're interested in hearing Pierre Boulez doing this repertoire, it's an embarrassment of riches. You have a lot to choose from. So this is just one disc. You can also get this box, which has all of his Debussy and all of his Ravel recordings. It's, let me see, 6 CDs. And sonically, these are probably better than the earlier ones. Here's what we're talking about when we're talking about the earlier ones. These should be pretty easy to find. Here's where the Nocturne shows up. Here's where Afternoon of the Faun shows up, and with the Philharmonia and La Mer. They got reissued on CD. That looked like this, but yeah, you can find the vinyl of these pretty easily. You can find them for a few bucks, man. So there's a lot to pick from. And I was going through my records, and here's another recording of the Debussy Nocturnes that's really cool. I've enjoyed listening to this one several times. Pierre Montieu, again, conducting Stravinsky's Firebird and the Debussy Nocturnes. It's an old RCA. My recollection is it sounds better than the ones. Usually when you see this Victrola kind of logo, you know that you're dealing with late 50s, early 60s, and a lot of them, the sound's a little, but you know, they're starting to, you know, they're heading into like what you're going to get on the Live in Stereo series. This one's well worth checking out. This one's really nice. So this is another one that could be lurking in the dollar bins that I would really recommend. So I'm going to wrap it up, but a couple other classical titles I'm going to mention. Yehudi Menuhin conducts Bach. This is great. Antonin Dvorak, Opus 106, string quartet. Um, at some point, I may try to hunt down. I know there's a CD that has this entire cycle of string quartets. This is a fantastic recording. So good, so good. And I got into this Yehudi Menuhin kick, and it all started with this album, uh, Beethoven violin sonatas, with Kempf on keyboards. Just a stupendous recording. Yeah, this one really got my attention, and it kind of got me on a kick where I've been listening to a lot of Yehudi Menuhin in the last couple of weeks. So that's what we got, guys. And I lied. I got one other thing I'm going to talk about in addition to some classical. I got another stack of records I want to hit on real quick. So these are just general things that I've run across that I think are worth listening to. Tell you what, we'll skip this too. Argent, the lead singer from the Zombies, I know that he became he put out a series of hard rock albums like in the 70s. This is a later one from 77, I believe. I've picked up two of his albums in the last couple weeks. One was an early one from the early 70s. This is later, like 77. I like this one. I think this one's great. A lot of really, again, I was talking about Fender Rhodes, and lots of really funky Fender Rhodes on this. And it's got this interesting inner sleeve here. This is kind of cool. So that was my introduction to Argent, and I am definitely interested in hearing some more of that. So Bebop Deluxe, huge. This band is so underrated. It's criminal. They should be like one of the great bands of the 70s. For whatever reason, they're not as well known as they should be. I came across this, which is a collection of Bebop Deluxe singles. I never thought of them as a singles band, but my God, man, just like one killer track after another, man. This album is just an absolute banger. And here's one. This was a big surprise. Donna Summer. Man, this album is a banger. You know, we all know the big hit. She works hard for the money. This is maybe a little later. It's kind of post. Disco has peaked by the time she does this album. But, you know, if you like soul, good soul music, good, yeah, man. I was completely surprised. I've been meaning to check out some Donna Summer for a while. And I definitely am going to check out some more of her albums. This was just a banger. I was really blown away how good that album was. Here's one. If you're into some really good production, Joe Jackson, Night and Day. This album's a classic. Yeah, I'm not going to beat it to death, but boy, that's one you should really check out. This is this is almost like a desert island disc for me. Oingo Boingo, Skeletons in the Closet. It's a greatest hits album, but man, I just love this album. It's just new wave insanity at its craziest. Just, you know, LA horn sections. Just I can't. Man, how do you describe the music of Oingo Boingo? I don't really know how to even describe these guys, but this is like not. I'd had it on CD ever since like I was in college. I didn't even know it had been released on vinyl. I managed to find a vinyl copy, so I didn't hesitate. Man, this album could seriously be like a desert island disc for me. I absolutely love this album. Here's a band I'd only recently heard of, Ambrosia. Apparently there's a couple of their albums from like 75, 76. I don't even know how to describe this, man, but they're pretty, you can probably find these pretty cheap. The only other, I'm not even going to try to describe this, but I will say that the album is produced by Alan Parsons. Let me just throw that in there. So this is, I just love this. This band is called Trees Speak. The album is called Ohm. And I'm going to read from the hype sticker because I don't think I can say it any better than it says it in the hype sticker. New Krautrock meets post-punk and psych from Tucson, Arizona for fans of Cluster, Tangerine Dream, Can, Noi. Yeah, that's a good description. But man, this album, I've heard, I've streamed a couple albums by this band, and I would have to say this one's the best in my opinion. But yeah, keep your eyes open for this one. And lastly, I got kind of nudged by Robert Fithen, his channel. He was talking about one of his all-time favorite albums, Fly Like an Eagle by Steve Miller Band. I hadn't listened to this album in quite a few years, and I dragged out my copy. This is one you should be able to find this one in a dollar bin. If you're not familiar with this album, man, treat yourself, man. This is just, man, it's solid. It's just a classic album. If you haven't heard this one, you know, you you'll find this one super easy in the dollar bins. But yeah, it's a classic, man. So that's what I got for tonight. I'm gonna try to do these videos more frequently. I think, yeah. The last one I did was about 2 or 3 months ago, so I'm getting a little bit better at doing these more often. So